What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I have some important breaking news for you, as well as I got a couple articles that I want to read and discuss as well. So first of all, it looks like Josh Rosen is going to be starting for the game against the Cowboys, which, I mean, I think, if you want to give yourself any chance to win at all, you obviously put Rosen in. He's definitely better than Fitzpatrick. He's younger than Fitzpatrick. However, obviously that being said, the offensive line is trash. And, he showed last year that he doesn't perform well behind a trash offensive line. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, I think it obviously makes sense. I mean, from the perspective of he definitely gives you the better chance to win, and you need to evaluate him, even though I don't think you can properly evaluate him because he's going to be under duress all the fucking time. But anyway, so it looks like after this coaching staff was potentially going to be stubborn and go with Fitzpatrick, it looks like after all, it only took 2 weeks for them to do as I said and as I predicted and insert Josh Rosen into the starting lineup. I told you it was going to be 2 to 4 weeks. The only reason why I gave it that wiggle room is simply because, one, I mean, you never know what this fucking coaching staff is going to do. And going into this week, they were saying that it was going to be Fitzpatrick. But also because, I figured if, maybe, the first couple weeks he wouldn't, play super bad. Although, the two performances speak for themselves, especially with the 2 pick sixes, although one of them was not his fault, in this past game. But I thought maybe he wouldn't play atrocious right out the gate or just play kind of bad out the gate, but they'd stick with him for a little while, and it would take until Fitzpatrick got hurt. I thought maybe possibly they would be stubborn until Fitzpatrick just got mauled enough to where he had to come out. But it looks like he did end up playing bad enough. I said it would either be 2 to 4 weeks if he played bad enough or got hurt, and that's how it was going to happen. And here we are. So now after 2 weeks, Josh Rosen should be coming into the game against the Cowboys. I don't think it's going to matter much. I mean, I think you might see a little bit more pop from the offense. He does have a better arm, and he is younger, like I said. But again, the offensive line is going to be trash. Our run game still hasn't, we'll have to see if our run game can do anything. I mean, we did better last week. We went from 21 to 42 yards. So it's 100% increase. Yay. But, so we'll see, man. We'll see how that turns out. I do think it makes sense to put him in. The only thing that would not make sense is that you're going to get him murdered too. And he did, almost get hurt last week. So if Josh Rosen sustains some kind of major injury because this offensive line is garbage, well, that's the risk you run because you didn't fucking put anybody in front of him. The other major breaking news is that the Cowboys had just released former first-round pick defensive end Taco Charlton, and it looks like the Dolphins have claimed him off of waivers. So, I mean, we'll see. The Cowboys gave up on him. He was, he was the first-round pick in 2017. So, I mean, it's another, like we picked up Robert Nkemdiche from the Cardinals after they released him, and Josh Rosen was a cast-off first-round pick. So, I mean, look, is there some potential benefit from taking these guys? Yeah, right? They were taken in the first round. It does say something that their teams are cutting bait with them, early in their rookie contracts, like Josh Rosen only after 1 year, Taco Charlton just 2 years into his contract. Kimdichie, I think, is also like 2 years in. And Kimdichie hasn't, he's been, I want to say he's been on like the PUP list or something. I don't even know. I don't even know where he is right now. He's not on injured reserve, but I want to say he hasn't been active or anything. I don't think. So I don't know. He's just lost there. So we'll see how that turns out. I mean, whatever. But and theoretically, I guess he could get some. The Dolphins could probe him for fucking information on the Cowboys or something. I don't know. We'll see if he plays. We'll see if he's active. We'll see how that turns out. Anyway, so that's like the breaking news. Rosen's gonna start, and we just picked up Taco Charlton. So, anyway, like I said, so there's a couple articles that I wanted to read to you because there's some interesting stuff. So there's this first one on Dolphins Wire. Will the Dolphins trade anyone else before the 2019 trade deadline? The Dolphins have been busy shuttling talent out the door at a breakneck pace ever since January, trading the likes of Ryan Tannehill, Robert Quinn, Kiko Alonso, Laramie Tunsil, Kenny Stills, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. Are we forgetting anyone? This roster is a complete stranger versus the one Dolphins fans saw take the field in December of 2018. Keep in mind, and I was thinking about that comment. I can't remember where it was, but somebody was saying in some article that I read, I believe I read it on, camera, that, we could see over 50%, maybe up to 80% of this roster next year being different as well. I mean, if that's the case, then you go into next year having a lot of the same problems as you do this year. A really young, inexperienced group, blah, 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 with a lot of turnover and essentially in the same position, just, with another year's worth of draft picks that are young, inexperienced guys. Potentially with some high talent, depending on who you get and whatever, but I mean, you end up going, if that happens, then we'll have a lot of the same, problems. But it's highly likely that is the case because the vast majority of the guys on the roster now are like, the reason why we're failing so bad is because we've stacked the roster with guys that, deserve to be at best on like, third string or practice squad of most NFL rosters. Anyway, and while some people may have a problem with it, which I do, the Dolphins are undertaking a drastic and necessary hard reset of their entire organization. Stop right there real quick. It is not necessary. There is nothing about this that is necessary. There's nothing to say that you have to, make yourself historically bad to get to, being great. Like, there's no rules that say that. That is the choice that is being made. And that's one of my chief complaints with this. Even if the massive gamble pays off somehow years down the road, I mean, right now we have to be historically bad. We are being forced. The fans have to endure a historically bad season because of the process that this regime has adopted. We can't wipe that off of the history books. It's not like, at best, 3 years, 4 years from now, when we're back to like relevant and maybe hoping to contend for a playoff spot or whatever, or even, 6, 7 years, if somehow by chance this all works out and this massive, massive, massive gamble pays off, and we do, let's say best case scenario, we make it to the Super Bowl, right? You still can't remove this stain in our history. So for the longest time, even though, and I'll put this in a personal perspective. So for the longest time, right, even though we've been mediocre, I've still always been able to hold my head high as a Dolphins fan and say, yeah, but you know what though? We have a really rich history as Dolphins fans. We might be mediocre right now. We're going through a rut. Things aren't great, but we've still managed to have, winning seasons. And Adam Gase fucking took us to the playoffs for the first time in 8 years, right? So to me, that's trending in the right direction. Somebody said that, we lost in our first game we gave up 59 points in the first game and 43 in the second. So we must be trending in the right direction. Are you kidding me? So you're telling me that just because we didn't break franchise worst records for most points given up in a game, 2 consecutive games in a row, that we're trending in the right direction? No, dude, that doesn't mean we're trending in the right direction. To me, what is trending in the right direction is we had a very mediocre team for the longest time, for decades. We finally made it to the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. And then, despite the amount of adversity and chaos and craziness and injuries that we sustained the following 2 years, we still managed to win 1 year 9-7, and the other year, was it 9-7? I think it was 9-7. It was either 9-7 or 7-9. Either way, somewhere around there. And then I think it was 9-7. And then year 3, it might have been. Anyway, either way. Then 6-10, right? Okay, we still managed to squeak that out, even though we were decimated by injuries and a hurricane and blah, 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 right? So we get healthy, but those are all things that are uncontrollable, right? It's not like they were decisions made by the team. So I'm like, okay, fine, cool. We're ready to go, man. Just next year, we're going to get everybody healthy, and they are going to put these pieces together. They are going to bounce back. They're going to have another good draft. And things are going to be popping this next year in 2019. And then they fire Adam Gase, and now this fucking shit show. And again, none of it was Adam Gase's fault. He couldn't control a single bit of that. He did the best that he could, and damn it, they did a damn good job with what they were given. And then, of course, now we have the additional information that he was also fired in part because, Stephen Ross, thinks it's a good idea to just fucking give up a season or 2 seasons, even though he says, right, fucking hypocrite that he is, he says fucking, although it was actually, to be fair, he was, subliminally honest. Right, because he says, well, I hope I don't have to go 3-13 or be bad, next year or whatever. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but, it could be 1, 2, 3 years before we're even competitive. So, and then we get the reports that he, essentially asked Adam Gase to tank this year, and that he wanted so he could go get a quarterback, and Adam Gase refused because he's got integrity, and furthermore because he saw what he was building. And Albert Wilson, after Gase was fired, tweeted out about it and was like, man, if you just gave us 1 more year to show what a genius he was. Dude, they had the pieces in place, man. None of this was necessary. Not a single bit of this was necessary. So that's why, I don't know why I'm the one that's not the real fan. It's everybody that thinks that this is a good way to go, that's soiling our proud history with an NFL worst season. Not just the Dolphins worst season. We'll continue to set, franchise worst records if we continue on this pace. But if we also continue on this pace, we're going to be the worst team in NFL history. And I'm sorry, but, inserting Josh Rosen and picking up Taco Charlton, I mean, those things don't really fucking increase your chances of winning this year anymore. Because Josh Rosen's going to get brutalized and potentially even hurt at some point, sooner rather than later. Since he's going in week 3 now. right? So, I mean, anyway, let me continue on though. But are there any other assets that the Dolphins could look to move on from? Any other players who could see themselves traded before the trade deadline this year? And now, so if they do, though, if they do any of this, then they just make themselves worse and worse and worse. Here are some candidates and what they might cost. Rashad Jones. Don't hold your breath here. The Dolphins have done a lot of smoothing over with Jones to help keep this relationship from falling off the ledge it's been teetering on since midway through 2018. But they've also undeniably held some phone calls about trading him. Yeah, don't think that they wouldn't get rid of Rashad Jones in a fucking heartbeat. I mean, look at who they've already gotten rid of. They would, no problem. The only question is really in that is what they could get for him. And I don't think it's likely that Rashad Jones gets traded just from that perspective, unless he is like, all right, trade me and just get whatever you can. And I mean, they'd have to find a partner that the Dolphins agree to, and so on and so forth. So it is a possibility. I don't think it happens, but ultimately Rashad Jones is clearly not going to be part of this regime's future. At some point he will not be on the team, so I mean, I think that's almost undeniable. It hasn't happened yet, obviously, so it's not written in stone, but I'd be willing to bet like 95%, I'm 95%, 98% sure that Rashad Jones will not be on this team, even probably next year, whether they trade him or not. But Jones is a difficult talent to trade, not because he's no longer good, but because his age, financials, and recent injury history are a difficult proposition for a team to take on, which is true. And so that's why I don't think it's likely he gets traded. I think it's more likely that they just cut him or they let his contract run out. I think it's probably more likely they just end up cutting him. Once it's less of a, a burden. Like next year, I mean, they could just cut him next year. They'd still have a little bit of his contract to pay and some dead money and stuff. But they were the highest in dead money this year, so clearly they don't give a shit about that either. These variables are all combined for a pretty toxic trade package, and thus it is difficult to envision Jones being traded in the coming weeks. Next, Kenyon Drake, which is a very likely possibility. There's some rumblings here that Drake may be on the block, most notably from Fox Sports' Jay Glazer. If you think about it, moving Drake makes sense, unfortunately. I don't agree with that, but I think that it is a very logical result and something that we could end up seeing before the trade deadline. Drake is an expiring contract. He's scheduled to be a free agent this spring. And although, also, having said that, I think it's also likely that they just don't re-sign him either and let him become a free agent this offseason. And the Dolphins have made it very clear that they plan on being aggressive spenders in free agency, which, by the way, I don't want them to be. I don't want them to go into this rebuilding of this team and being like, oh, I'm going to fucking spend a whole bunch of money in free agency. That's not how you properly use all of this cap money that you have. So if they go in, so for me, if that's what they want, and I already know that they've already made it clear that they're gonna take a quarterback high in the draft, which I disagree with. But if they're gonna do that, if they're gonna take a quarterback high in the draft, we already know that for sure. Who knows, when and where they're going to take an offensive lineman. They could be stupid enough not to fucking take one at all with those first round picks. I doubt that, and I find that to be pretty unlikely. I'm fairly certain they're going to take an offensive lineman with one of those first picks. But they could find a way to not get the top talent by waiting. And there could be a run on the top talent and offensive lineman, and then they could get one of the later first round pick or second round, third round pick offensive lineman because they waited or something like that, like they did this season, this past draft. And instead of taking an offensive lineman in the first round where there was all the prime talent at their pick, they decided to take a defensive lineman after there was a run on defensive linemen. Nothing against Christian Wilkins, but I thought it was a stupid way to handle that draft. Anyway, but so then if they go into next year for sure going to take a quarterback high and then expect to spend big in free agency with that, you know, all of this cap space. Well, I don't think that's a really good, you know, I don't think those are good positive next steps. You know, I mean, there's obviously a lot of other picks and stuff they got to do that go into that. So, and there's a lot of information that isn't available yet and all of that. You know, obviously that offseason hasn't gotten here yet, so we'll have to wait and see. But, I mean, Chris Greer said it himself, right? You know, a lot of people take that as just good things, but people bitched and bitched and bitched so much before because we were big free agent spenders, and now they just said to us, well, you know, we want to spend big in free agency, and everybody's like, yeah, let's do it. Okay, well, it's... God, I'm just so tired of like people just flip-flopping and never being consistent. They just blindly follow, you know, dear leader, and be like, oh, okay, whatever you say, dude, is what I believe. It doesn't matter, you know, what my eyes tell me. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or if it's logical. None of that shit, blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, whatever. Anyway, let me continue. And then, and the Dolphins have made it very clear that they plan on being aggressive spenders in free agency, which would eliminate the chance that the Dolphins get a compensatory pick back for Drake in 2021. And that's another thing. So if they are big free agent spenders, yeah, we get some compensatory picks this year, but then we won't get any for 2021. And that's part of their supposed building plan, is that they also want to have a bunch of picks for 2021. So spending big next free agency will be counterintuitive to that for 2021. If the Dolphins don't see Drake being a part of their future, the best move they can make, especially in this hot mess of a season, is trading Drake before the deadline to ensure they get something in return for him. What could they get for Drake? A day 3 draft pick seems reasonable. Drake was a 3rd round pick back in 2016. Given his low usage and high ceiling, Miami could get a reasonable return. But the contract situation makes it difficult for Miami to ask for too much, as the team will have to pay up to keep Drake once they land him. They predict traded for a 2020 5th round pick. They also predicted not traded with Rashad Jones. Tight end Mike Gesicki. The Dolphins recently invested a 2nd round pick in Gesicki, and while he hasn't made much of a splash with it yet, Gesicki is at least showing improvement. There's nothing that would indicate Gesicki as untouchable. Out of the 4 names included here, he's probably the 3rd most available and the 2nd most likely to actually get traded. Yeah, I mean, nobody is untouchable as far as I'm concerned with this regime, and he seems to like getting rid of everything that this past regime has done. So it wouldn't surprise me if they traded Gesicki either. But there's no reason why Miami would give up on him unless Gesicki voices displeasure with being with the team. He puts in parentheses he hasn't, although I don't know how he knows that. Or if a team offers up a plus value versus what the Dolphins invested get him, a 2nd round pick. They haven't and probably won't. Prediction not traded. And last, he puts in here, cornerback Xavier Howard. We tell you not to hold your breath here, but the Dolphins literally just traded Laramie Tunsil, who was long considered untouchable. The key difference between the two, Miami has already extended Howard. They're committed to one another, unless you know someone comes knocking and offering a boatload of picks again. There's already one cornerback on the trade block, Jacksonville's Jalen Ramsey, and the asking price for Ramsey is probably equal to what it would cost the team to pry away Howard. Multiple 1st round picks and then some extra. The difference is that Miami has already paid Howard his guaranteed cash. Is that enough to get a deal done? Doubtful. You never know, man. You never know. It's Howard, you never know. Anyway, so real quick, some updates with Taco Charlton though. As of right now, because he is still on his rookie contract, 2 years, $2.5 million. So there's not a lot of gamble there, but I mean, you know, it's we'll see, man. You know, we'll see. I mean, it just, because it, like I said, it does say something that the Cowboys were ready to give up on him, you know, halfway through his. Now, sometimes I will say that, and part of my argument with Devontae Parker is that he just needs to see, you know, some like a change of scenery, right? And you know, I think that would be good for him. So perhaps, you know, Taco Charlton comes here and, you know, I don't know, revitalize his career or whatever, right? But at the same time, it is also possible that he doesn't, right? And that he goes on to just be a bust. I mean, that it happens that guys don't work out far more often than guys do. That's why getting rid of proven guys like Minka and Tunsil and Stills and Kiko and a bunch of these guys is just super problematic, because you know what you have with them, and you're getting rid of all these guarantees. You know what you got for just hope. Anyway, let me move on though. Real quick, I also wanted to note that apparently one of the refs told Raekwon McMillan during the game to stay off of Tom after a legal hit. After a legal tackle, a legal hit on Tom, one of the refs said to stay off. I mean, come on. It's super obvious that the Patriots get favored. Anyway, so let's see. And there was one more. I think it was this one right here. Okay, so yeah. So the other article that I wanted to read is from ESPN.com. How are the Dolphins handling 0-2? Want light at end of tunnel. Okay, this Cameron Wolf wrote this. So the Miami Dolphins are undergoing a fire sale, most recently with the trade of safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, and rebuild that rivals any other in recent league history. The long-term goal is to build a winner. Yeah, I mean, this is unprecedented. So many people have said that. I've been watching lots of different sources, podcasts and YouTubers and mainstream media, and I've been trying to soak up as many different perspectives and information as I possibly can. And a lot of people are just super. It's because what the Dolphins are doing is it's never really been done to this extent. The Dolphins are selling hope for a promising future, a plan that centers on drafting a franchise quarterback, in parentheses, tank for Tua, please, in reference to Alabama's Tua Tagovailoa, are loud. Collecting a bounty of draft picks, and Dolphins general manager Chris Grier preparing to be aggressive via free agency, draft, and trade. I do not want them to be big spenders in free agency. And I mean, I personally don't want them taking a quarterback in the first round, especially if you do plan to keep Rosen around. Like, it's even more like you can pick a quarterback in the third round. Phil, all those first round picks, dude, you could totally just like revamp your entire offensive line. I mean, imagine that would be unprecedented too. Take you might not have three guys worth 3 first-round picks. But if the Steelers don't do well this season, and that is a high pick, then our first 2 picks, imagine if you took 2 offensive linemen, the 2 best offensive linemen in the draft. Boom. You still got 3 spots to fill, but, I mean, there you go, right? And I mean, maybe with that third one, you can move back, accrue some more draft capital, and then take, another one. Like, you could just load up on all of the, but at the same time, though, this entire roster is just riddled with holes. So, I mean, where do you even start filling? But I would say you do start filling, get a quarterback in round 3 and start with the offensive line. For sure, start with that offensive line. I mean, we'll see. But players and coaches still have to live through the realities of the 2019 season. ESPN talked with several Dolphins players about how they are handling the physical and mental teardown. The biggest takeaway is that each player has been affected in different ways. They start with the franchise player. Cornerback Xavier Howard is unquestionably the Dolphins' best remaining player, the current on-field face of the franchise. He is coming off a Pro Bowl 2018 season when he was the NFL's co-interception leader with 7 despite playing only 12 games. Howard tweeted out a gif of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's Will Smith standing alone in an empty living room in response to the Fitzpatrick trade. He says his teammates got a kick out of the tweet, and he thought it was a funny summary of how he was feeling after another talent was shipped away from Miami. Let's pause just real quick though and read into that a little bit. Yes, he said that some teammates got a laugh out of it, I'm sure, right? And I'm sure he thought it was, a humorous way to approach the situation. And that's fine, and that's all well and good, and that's, a good approach to have, man. I mean, because I said during the last game, if I don't laugh at this shit, I'm gonna cry, right? But that's the thing. He thought it was a funny summary of how he was feeling. And the GIF is Will Smith from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, if you haven't seen it, in an empty living room with this, like, man, my life sucks look on his face. So what he's feeling on the inside is, dude, I just feel super alone, like super isolated, and like this is just miserable. So yes, he tried to be humorous about it now in week 2. But if we keep going on like this in the rest of the season, and he goes on though to explain, but if we go on the rest of the season, it's going to get worse. And it's going to be able, it's going to be difficult to remain that, it's going to be difficult to maintain that kind of resiliency. Howard and for a lot of what he actually says here, right? So this is super important. Howard understands the Dolphins are planning for the future and that he is a key part of it. Look, here, real quick, nothing against Howard. I love the kid. He's great, but I would say, and I would say that his football IQ is really high, right? But I would say that there is, like, I don't want to sound like a douchebag, but like, I do think that, like I think he's a little bit more gullible, right? Like, than let's say Minkah Fitzpatrick. Like, I think he's a little bit smarter, right? So I'm not, again, nothing against, Xavier Howard, but like, I mean, if you look, right, like Xavier's a really quiet guy, he's not as articulate. Like, Minkah Fitzpatrick is a really articulate guy, right? Again, that's not a knock on Howard at all, right? It's just everybody's different. But I think my point is I think he's a little bit more, moldable. So that, and especially since they paid him that big contract, he's kind of like, yeah, I mean, like, my feelings about this aren't good. My gut is telling me that this really sucks and this is not good. But they did just give me this big contract, and they say that they're trying to build for the future and so on and so forth. And yeah, they got a bunch of draft picks. But I'm feeling super lonely. Well, okay, fine. I'll go along with it, right? And so, but his comments though show that he actually is pretty in tune. So, let's see. But he has been programmed to take things only one game and one season at a time, because you have to. Otherwise, I mean, either way, it's gonna weigh, man. But anyway, here's what he said though, and this is super important. We got the picks, and the future looks good. Potentially, I added that. The potentially is me, but I'm worried about now. These 16 games, I'm in my prime. I do want to win now, Howard said. Players out here risking their bodies every day. I want to be in a position where we can succeed. So guys, listen. I think overall, all I'm saying is that I think that they were, especially most notably because they did give him that contract extension and pay him like the most, as the highest paid cornerback in the league. I think that has a huge part to do with it, right? And Minkah was just on his, was just in year 2 of his rookie contract. So he's not getting really even paid that much, even though he's a first rounder, right? But Xavier Howard sees the same, or sees some of the problems that I've been, talking about. And some of the same ones that Minkah Fitzpatrick saw, right? So the only difference is that Howard has been at least temporarily convinced, right? Whereas Minkah was like, nah, bruh. Hell nah. This shit sucks. I ain't down for this shit. This is not what I signed up for. I'm just on this cheap ass rookie contract. I'm a bounce, bro. Well, I got the chance. And lo and behold, the Steelers are going to use him at safety, at free safety, where he belongs. And I bet you he's going to ball out for them. Anyway, so, but Howard's like, yeah, I do have the security, but he recognizes it. So how long is it going to last? Because at some point, he's going to have that break. And he's going to be like, dude, nah, I can't do this. Especially if he happens to have like an injury scare. If for God forbid, if Xavier Howard has an injury scare at all, he's going to be like, yeah, nah, bro, I can't do this. This is not worth it. It's not worth it. And because he's got his guaranteed money from his contract, he can get a trade and he can be all right. Even if he had to restructure that trade or his contract a little bit, he still got most of his guaranteed money and he's fucking good to go. So Howard signed a 5-year, $75.25 million extension in May that made him the NFL's highest paid cornerback. He said he didn't realize the rebuild was going to be this drastic when he signed his deal. Most notably, the trades of Laramie Tunsil, Kenny Stills, and Fitzpatrick came as a shock. But I'm here, I'm under contract, can only control what I can control, Howard said. See, I mean, like, these comments though, they show that this is really fragile. That this relationship right now between him and the Dolphins is really fragile. It's not a strong connection, and if they continue to be as bad as they are, I'm telling you, man, there will be a breaking point. Greer said Howard told him as recently as Monday that he has bought in 100% on the plan and wants to be with the Dolphins. But Howard, 26, does want to win during the prime of his career. And that's what I'm saying, right? So, like, that's the difference between him and Fitzpatrick is for now, he's like, all right, man, because I think with him, it's kind of like, I mean, I guess it is with Fitzpatrick too. It's like all or nothing, right? So, like, and Fitzpatrick was just like, everybody comes to their realizations at different times, right? So, who knows, man, if they can have some kind of, semi-miraculous turnaround to the season. But I really think that at this, they're going to continue along the pace that they've gone, and they're going to be historically bad. And if that's the case, then it's going to be tough to keep this going. And I fear that not, look, I mean, best case scenario is that they just waste some of the prime years of his life or of his career, right? That's the best case scenario right now. That they waste this year and next year, and the year after not being a contender, right? So that's the worst case scenario or best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that we end up losing yet another superstar, another stud, because eventually he ends up wanting out. I want light at the end of the tunnel. I want something to look forward, for our work to get rewarded. Shit like that. I do worry about that, Howard said. I don't feel like my prime is being wasted, but I feel like a season is important. He doesn't feel that way now, but it won't be much longer before he does if we continue down this path. My main focus right now is staying healthy. See, look, I'm telling you, if he has any kind of an injury scare because the defense is getting so overworked, I'm telling you, bro, I'm trying to win and be better with the people we have in the locker room. It is what it is at the end of the day. They ended up paying me. I'm here. Just got to deal with it. I'm telling you, bro, super fragile, the relationship. The veteran captain. Dolphins center Daniel Kilgore has taken a vocal leadership role during this rebuild, offering encouragement despite Miami being outscored 102-10 in its first 2 games. Yeah, we're 0-2 and we got blown out. We got our asses kicked, honestly, Kilgore said, but we got to stay positive, stay with us. This thing is only going to get better. I mean, I appreciate his optimism, but there's no tangible evidence for that. This coaching staff and these younger guys, they work their asses off. And again, they can work as hard as they want. Brian Flores can continue to be a slave driver during practice, and they can want it as much as they want. They don't have a team that is fit to do it, especially if they do end up trading more guys. They work too hard not to have success in the future. Okay, and maybe some of these guys will have success in the future. It'll probably be on different teams. But it's not going to be this year, and it's likely to not be next year either. I love this coaching staff and how they prepare us. Well, I mean, if you like the grueling, okay, sure. Kilgore has bought into the process. At 31, it's unclear if he'll be able to be a key player on the other side of the rebuild, but he sees every game as a move toward improvement. All right, we'll see, and that's another thing. I mean, I find it very unlikely that Kilgore is going to be a future part of this team either. So I'm pretty sure this coaching staff, so as much as he says he loves them or whatever, I'm pretty sure this coaching staff only views him as, a stopgap player at best. You can preach all you want, but it's self-driven, Kilgore said. If you're going to sit down and give up, that's on you. I've never known anyone not to want to come in and work every day. And good, like I said, I mean, hey, they can try as hard as they want, and it's admirable, and they, whatever, but it's not going to matter in the long run. The player who wanted out and got out. It's possible no Dolphins player was affected by changes over the past year more than Fitzpatrick. Following his solid 2018 rookie season, he looked to be one of the Dolphins' top players around whom to build, but significant differences with the coaching staff about what position Fitzpatrick should play led to a trade request that was granted Tuesday when Miami shipped him to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who again are going to use him at free safety. But not just that, but also because of this disastrous approach that they're taking. Sometimes we weren't put in the best position, but even still, we know it's up to the players to make the play. And that's good of him to say, and that's true, but again, this team was intentionally built to not be good. Fitzpatrick said after Miami's 59-10 loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Fitzpatrick, a first-round pick, had expressed frustration over being asked to play linebacker and strong safety, two areas where he didn't feel comfortable or didn't believe fit with his skill set, sources told ESPN, which is a fact. He doesn't even have the body frame to play those positions. And when people like, I'm sorry, dude, I have to do it, but when people like Doug say things like, but he's a versatile player and he's a Swiss Army knife and he played multiple positions in college, that's being super naive at best, but very disingenuous, because yes, he played multiple positions, but he didn't play linebacker or strong safety. He played free safety, slot corner, and a little bit of corner, boundary corner. He didn't play linebacker or strong safety because he doesn't have the body frame for it, and that's not his skill set. That's what this organization was asking him to do. Fitzpatrick requested a trade following that Week 1 loss. A week later, he was replaced by a 2020 first-round pick. The young newcomer. It wasn't a secret the Dolphins were a rebuilding team that would suffer some losses in 2019, but that wasn't a bad thing for all of them. Vince Biegel has been a back-of-the-roster linebacker for most of his NFL career. And that's why some of these guys are, they're in a little bit of a honeymoon phase right now, because some of these guys are getting to start and get playing time where they wouldn't before. But it's going to wear on them too. And when he was traded from a championship contender in the New Orleans Saints to rebuilding Miami for Kiko Alonso 1 week before the season, Biegel was ecstatic. I knew it was going to be a great opportunity because this is a young team, Biegel said. I came from New Orleans, where they're one of the oldest veteran teams in the NFL. So for me to come over here, there are opportunities for obviously more playing time. There are opportunities for me to develop as a leader here. But there's no guarantee that he'll even be part of it, because again, one of the big issues is that, this team is going to suck so bad just because it's built that way. That, a lot of these guys, although he did put some good film on tape and did get a sack of quarterback Tom Brady, fabulous. But most of it is going to be garbage, so it's not even going to be that great. So it could actually end up hurting his career in the long run. Biegel, 26, was rewarded with more playing time in the Dolphins' 43-0 loss Sunday to the New England Patriots, and he got his first career sack. His wife couldn't contain her excitement at home. For me, it's to be able to continue to show myself, develop myself, and show this team and organization what I'm about. I'm extremely thankful to be here, Biegel said. I'm excited to hopefully stick around here for a long time. Well, I mean, good for you, man. I hope you get what you want, right? But again, I mean, it's even gonna wear on guys like that after they just take a shellacking at, game in and game out. The veteran quarterback. But I do want, again though, because I want to make sure I do give you different perspectives from different players right now, and what they're saying. But even in a lot of, like I said, even with like Xavier Howard, even though he's saying like right now, yeah, his comments show, like if you read into it, and if you I mean, he made it pretty clear, I thought. I didn't think he was, he said he thinks about it. He's just trying to stay healthy. He's worried about it, wasting the prime years of his career. Anyway, the veteran quarterback. For Ryan Fitzpatrick, the opportunity to start at quarterback for his 8th NFL team was more than enough reason to join the Dolphins. He wasn't overly worried about their talent level or long-term plan because he's not going to be part of it. I mean, that's clear. It was about the opportunity to be one of the guys and play the game he loves. Losing is a part of the game, but blowout losses do feel different than the close ones. Sometimes they are harder to put behind you, Fitzpatrick said. They're always kind of down for a little bit. To have 2 in a row, maybe it lingers a little bit longer, but by Wednesday, you've got to pull all your focus and energy into your next team and the next game. You just have to compartmentalize everything that you're doing. But look, even in that statement, so he just said, after 1, it lingers for a minute, but then you move on. After 2, it lingers a bit longer. If this continues, it's going to linger longer and longer and longer. Then it's going to carry over into the next game. Then it's going to carry over into 2 games from now. And then it's going to snowball, and it's going to continue to get worse. That's why they have to turn this thing around in some majorly drastic way, which is just against all odds for to even, pump the brakes on this, snowball effect that's happening. Fitzpatrick, however, encourages the team not to compartmentalize major transactions such as the recent trades. Okay. There's the elephant in the room. There are certain things, whether it's the Minka trade or Laramie or Kenny trade or dropping the ball or throwing an interception, that some people treat them as taboo, but it's really, you just have to be open about it and put everything out there, Fitzpatrick said. A lot of this stuff, it's got to be talked about and put out there, and then you move on. Yeah, well, the more it builds, the harder it, and he even said that just a second ago, right? So the more that it builds, the harder it is to just move on. The coach, Brian Flores, says he believes his team is resilient and that strength will carry it through the struggle. The Brooklyn, New York native relies on the adversity he faced growing up when times got rough. Okay, dude, but you can't just, it's not just that easy to project your, maybe you are a super resilient guy, but you can't just project that onto everybody. And I mean, bruh, like, when guys break, they break, right? And the worse that this gets, the more that's going to happen. Growing up in a tough neighborhood, I'm very prepared for difficult moments. I learned resilience at a very early age, Flores said. When you deal with tough times, you want to lean on the people who you trust and care about you and have your back. But that's part of the problem, is that a lot of your players don't feel like you're that guy, because of what you've been doing. You always know that if you put your head down and work hard, things normally turn around and get better. Not always. And I mean, frankly, that's kind of, I know this is a broader thing, but that for the vast majority of people, that's not the case. For the vast majority of people, we get fucked over no matter how hard we work. No matter how many times we try and bounce back and we're resilient, we get fucked over just because life is like that and because that's how the system is designed, right? So, I mean, we'll see, bro. You got a few days from now, you got another opportunity. Although we go play the Cowboys in their stadium, and I mean, the Cowboys are looking really good right now, so we'll see, bro. Flores is all in on the process and is prepared for a rough 2019 season. He hasn't once complained about the talent or lack thereof around him. Yeah, because he's the one that's doing it. My thought process is always, I'm going to coach the guys we have, period. Flores said, there's pain every season for every team. Yeah, but not this much self-inflicted pain. When you go through an NFL season, which this is my 16th, every team deals with adversity. Yes, Adam Gase and the past regime dealt with plenty of it, but none of it was self-inflicted. None of it. Except for, you could say, a little bit with the trading of, you know, some prominent players. But he didn't do that to every key player across his roster. It was just a few bad apples that he didn't felt like meshed with, you know, the culture that he was building, the open dialogue kind of culture, right? The symbiotic kind of culture that he was trying to implement, right? Because they were very loud, very selfish, you know, me kind of players, divas. And that's not what he wanted, right? You have to be able to endure that and stand up to it and not make excuses and not point fingers and not feel sorry for ourselves. And get back up, go back to work and fight another day, try to improve, get better, and help this team win. Well, you failed miserably, epically, historically so far. You know. So real quick, this is an interesting tweet. Jason OTC, this is his Twitter handle. Not sure if starting Rosen is the best move for Miami or not. Part of me thinks it's great to showcase him and get a chance to flip him again. Another part thinks the team is so bad and he'll look so bad he loses all value. Well, you know, we'll see. Anyway, the Dolphins have also waived guard tackle Brian Witzman to make room for Taco Charlton. So they make the unknown nobody from the Bears that they just picked up, offensive lineman they're getting rid of to make room for defensive end Taco Charlton. Fabulous. Anyway, so that's all I got for you guys. That was kind of a lot. This video is about an hour long now. There's a lot there. Like I said, some big news. And yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I'm out. I'll see y'all soon. Phins up.